Вітаю, цей брифінг.
Good afternoon. This briefing is dedicated to exposing another batch of lies and propaganda from the aggressor state. On Monday morning, the head of Russia's external intelligence service threw a fake into the media space all around the world that Ukraine resumes work on a so-called dirty nuclear bomb and that spent nuclear fuel was transferred from the Refuting nuclear power plant to Chernobyl. This is a complete nonsense claimed only to justify Russia's further aggression against Ukraine. Next, we refute the statement made by Russian President Putin during his meeting with Russian so-called military commanders who are actually military propagandists. At that meeting, Putin said that they had allegedly destroyed 5 Patriot systems near Kiev, and after that Russia would have no problem destroying any building in Kiev. This statement is also untrue because even according to official information, only 2 Patriot systems were delivered to the country. In addition, no Patriot system have actually been destroyed on the territory of Ukraine. There is only one aim in stating this. Such statements are meant to strengthen patriotic sentiment in Russia and provide a public justification for further aggression against Ukraine. Also, during his conversation with the African leader in Moscow, Putin once again tried to find arguments for continuing the war, saying that all the problems in Ukraine began after the bloody coup d'etat in 2014, which was supported by Western sponsors and even named the sum they spent on this coup. That's not true. First of all, no sums were ever mentioned by anyone. Secondly, there were no sponsors of this coup. It was an uprising of the people of Ukraine against the corrupt government that had abandoned the European integration direction. And finally, the coup turned bloody. After that time, the president, who later escaped, ordered the killing of peaceful demonstrators in Kiev, after which events became uncontrollable. And such statements by the Russian leader should convince only those who do not remember the historical context and did not follow the events in Ukraine in those years. Let's move on. In order to find and continue to use Russian citizens as cannon fodder in this war, Russian propaganda is streaming unconfirmed and in fact false information using staged shootings for this. For example, the state Russian news agency TASS posts on its channel a video made by a professional camera somewhere at a training ground accompanied by the title "Russian MLRS Tornado S destroyed a HIMARS system." There is no evidence of the destruction of any HIMARS in the video, only missile launches from the same Russian Tornado. Most likely it was made somewhere on the training ground for this footage. Next, we see how the Russian media are trying to present information about the events on the battlefield in Ukraine in a favorable way to them. They say that the Ukrainian military does not want to take part in counteroffensive operation, and as a result they fill the engines of Leopard tanks with sand. This information was thrown into the Russian media space with reference to unnamed persons and then massively disseminated both through Telegram and LiveJournal. They say that this is a report from the other side describing in detail the mood of the crews of German Leopards. My brother, a tankman on a Leopard, called and said they are trying to break tanks, filling the filters with sand, running over a mine backwards and so on. This is a lie. There is not a single person who would say these words on camera, even with their face hidden. There is no such person. And this is a fable. It turns up in one media, then in another one, in order to maintain morale in the ranks of the Russian army itself, which is actually very worried about the offensive actions of the Ukrainian armed forces. Let's move on to Russia Today. A statement with the reference to the head of the Russian Chemical Protection Forces, Kirillov. The flooding of the territories of the Kherson region planned by Kiev can form foci of mosquito-borne West Nile virus. How cynical. First of all, there is no flooding, but an environmental disaster that Russia itself has caused, shifting the responsibility for its criminal actions onto Ukraine. Sooner or later, they will have to answer for this in the international tribunal, including such leaders of the chemical forces who spread lies to the whole world. Another fake about the alleged death of the chief of Ukrainian intelligence Budanov, which was spread in all Russian media resources, is also a lie. They reference the fugitive traitor and ex-MP Ilya Kiva, who has actually turned into one of the megaphones of the Russian propaganda, spreading lies. The head of Ukrainian military intelligence, Kirilo Budanov, is in good health and optimistic, and sends his greetings to the Ukrainian armed forces as well to the Russian aggressor, who will sooner or later face retribution for all the evil and all the lies they have spread both in the country and around the world. Similarly, the reference to the German newspaper Stern that Budanov could have been killed is also a lie. The German edition itself denied this information, saying it had never made such publications. This is not for the first time. We have already analyzed a lot of fake covers of foreign publications distributed by Russian propaganda, which were easily checked by simply going to the archives of these publications and finding no evidence of the existence of such covers. By the way, they in the same way spread fake news about the death of the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine, and then, as if they had nothing to do with it, showed his photos at events awarding the Ukrainian military without apologizing for the lies they had spread before. Next, Russia is trying to find some favorable version of the shelling that they organized during the African leaders' visit to Kiev, and through the Ukraina.ru they cite the Russian Ministry of Defense. They call it a strike on decision-making centers a few kilometers north of Kiev. In this way, they refute their own fake that there was no shelling, saying that it actually took place, but not in Kiev, where the African leaders were, but somewhere north of Kiev. That is, they say their lives were not in danger. This once again proves that Russian lies are based solely on disinformation and misleading statements, expecting the audience to forget what they said a few days before. Once again, Russia is trying to find international mouthpieces for its lies, and this time, one of these speakers was Romanian Senator Diana Sosoaca, who said that Ukraine does not exist as a country. She is cited by the Putin in Telegram channel. If you look at who this Romanian politician is, back in April 2022, she called on the Romanian authorities not to support Ukraine in the aggression that Russia has launched against our land. She also introduced a bill to amend Romanian laws where she called for the annexation of the territory of the Chernivtsi region of Ukraine as the Zmeini Island, which corresponds to the Russian military propaganda. And finally, some more news where Russia is trying to find support for its public opinion in this aggression. So Putin in Telegram, a Russian propaganda resource, tells us that an African with Russian citizenship went to serve in the war against Ukraine. They found some Kamuni Samuel McCall, who, as soon as he received a Russian passport, immediately came to the Dagestan military enlistment office and signed up as a volunteer for the special military operation. This can only be told to each other as an anecdote. In fact, this news was made to gain favor on the African continent for the Russian aggression against Ukraine, and the Russian military propagandist, the editor-in-chief of the Regnum agency, tells a story saying that she was at the front, communicated among Russian aggressors, and saw a map of Russia with the occupied Ukrainian territories on the wall. Here is a dialogue between the two aggressors. "I can't get used to Donetsk being part of Russia," says the mobilized from Udmurtia. "And I cannot get used to Udmurtia being my country now," says the other mercenary that comes from Donetsk. "I am a local, and everything here is mine." In reality, of course, Donetsk is neither Russia nor part of the territory to which Udmurtia belongs. Both Donetsk and all the occupied territories will be liberated, and the aggressor will be punished for all the evil it has brought to Ukrainian lands. I will conclude this briefing with a traditional appeal. You can see the nonsense that Russia propaganda is spreading all around the world. So do not trust a single word that comes out of their mouth. If you live outside Ukraine, there is a Russian-speaking TV channel, Freedom, or international broadcasting channel UATV. Trust these resources, as well as the Ukrainian military and political leadership. See you soon.